he comes again off the turnover, and he slams it home! Outstanding girls basketball matchup between the...
Hello and welcome to Unscripted with SkoodSports. I'm John Scooters, getting set to bring you all the sports that fit into one video. Today on Unscripted, we take a look back at week 2 in the NFL season, and I bring you my 5 takeaways from the NFL week that was. We begin with the kicking problem in the NFL. Well, the NFL continues to have an issue with kickers, as just a couple of years ago, the team tried to make kicking more difficult by moving extra points back 15 yards in order to eliminate the automatic extra point after touchdowns that had been so darn annoying throughout the last 30 years prior to that move. But when you take a look at the kicking problem now, it's a whole new breed. Just this past week, we saw issues not only with the Cleveland Browns, the factory of sadness, where Zane Gonzalez missed 2 extra points and 3 field goals in the team's loss to the New Orleans Saints 21-18, but also a solid team like the Minnesota Vikings, who saw rookie kicker Daniel Carlson miss 3 field goals, including a game-winning 30-plus yarder as time expired in overtime as the team tied their rivals, the Green Bay Packers. The kicking problem continues to rear its ugly head, and many are calling it an issue for the league. I don't think it really is. I think the bigger issue is the flag problem. Every play, every positive play, it's a flag, and it's always some cheapy little block in the back 40 yards away from the play that ends up ruining an exciting play and making everyone pull their hair out. But the kicking problem is real, and the Cleveland Browns and Minnesota Vikings have sought to remedy it as they got rid of both Gonzalez and Carlson and brought in replacements on Monday. Taking a look at the second takeaway from week 2, that is Fitzmagic. Ryan Fitzpatrick, 4 touchdowns, over 400 yards yet again, throwing a 70-plus yard touchdown to Deshaun Jackson on the opening play of the game against Philadelphia as he and the Tampa Bay Bucks took care of business in beating the defending Super Bowl champions 27-21 from Tampa, Florida. When you look at Fitzpatrick, I mean, this is a guy who, over the course of his 13-plus year career, has had moments of greatness, but has never been able to sustain it for a full season. I look back at 2011 when he was on the Bills. I think he had that team something like 5-1 to start the year. He even beat the New England Patriots, and then things fell apart, and I think they finished about 500 on the campaign. That's the type of player Fitzpatrick is. And the question now for Dirk Cutter becomes, do you go back to Jameis Winston when the former number 1 overall pick is ready to go off of suspension in week 4? At this point, if Fitzpatrick plays well in week 3 against Pittsburgh, I don't see how you can, as Fitzpatrick has put together some of the best numbers in Tampa Bay Bucks history over a 2-game span. I think you keep Winston out for a short term, see if Fitzpatrick reverts back to a pumpkin, and if he does, then you can go back to Jameis, eat some dubs, Winston, and see what the former number 1 overall pick out of FSU has to offer. My third takeaway from the week that was, rolling with Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, what a performance. Much like Ryan Fitzpatrick through the first 2 weeks, if not even better. Mahomes set a NFL record with 10 touchdown passes in his first 2 NFL starts, as he has led the Chiefs to a 2-0 record, beating potential playoff contenders in Pittsburgh and Los Angeles. For Mahomes, the weapons around him obviously lent itself to success, but he brings an added dimension to Alex Smith, who put up similarly impressive numbers, though not quite to the eye-opening level of Patrick, in Kansas City does. And that is not only his ability to stand tall in the pocket, but also his deep ball. Few players have as strong an arm as Mahomes does, and that's why the Chiefs gave up a 2018 first-round pick to move up back in 2017 and select him, and I think it's showing that that was the right move. My only concern is how this translates into playoff football, where Andy Reid and company have had issues over the course of his 20-year coaching career. My fourth takeaway from week 2 in the NFL, well, that big battle in Central Florida. During the course of the week going into the Jaguars-Patriots game, the only things flapping were the Jaguars' gums. But after their thorough drubbing of the Patriots, the only things flapping were the excuses of Patriots fans everywhere. Oh, it's just week 2. They're acting like it's their Super Bowl. Oh, what happened in the conference championship? Y'all still got Bortles. Oh, they're holding Gronk. What the heck, bro? The NFL is rigged just like the Super Bowl, bro. Come on. The reason the Patriots lost to the Jaguars is simple. Line play and playmakers. The Patriots don't have enough of them and don't have solid line play on either ends of the ball. Certainly not as solid as the Jaguars. Jacksonville's defense is one of the best in the NFL, and they showed it on Sunday by shutting down New England's offense for most of the game and by limiting Rob Gronkowski to very little production in the team's blowout win. Jacksonville now moves to 2-0 on the year as the Patriots are 1-1, and if these two teams do meet again in the postseason, this victory for the Jaguars could go a long way towards putting that game in Florida as opposed to Foxborough. My final takeaway from Week 2 of the NFL season, the offensive line of the New York Giants. Well, the Giants went into the offseason fresh off their worst season in 12 years, thinking that, well, maybe the issue was just Ben McAdoo and not the talent as a whole. They went in the offseason and signed Nate Solder to play left tackle because the offensive line was pretty poor already. They then drafted Saquon Barkley to be their number 1 running back with the 2nd overall pick. Were those good moves? On the surface, many thought they were. The problem is, the Giants' offensive line as a whole was an absolute wreck, and Erec Flowers is a disaster. The former number 9 overall pick gave up multiple sacks on Sunday as part of the team's 6 sacks allowed performance against the talented Cowboys pass rush in the team's 20-13 loss to Dallas. Eli Manning was running for his life, and that's going to be the case all season because while the team did sign Solder, they didn't do anything to remedy the rest of their offensive line and even lost their starting center, Weston Richburg, in the offseason to free agency. And when you look at the decision to take Barkley number 2, sure, he may go on to be one of the best running backs in the NFL, but it's not a valued position. You can get by with running backs by committee, as we've seen them do in New England for many years. When was the last time Tom Brady had a number 1 star running back? Corey Dillon, perhaps? And they've won multiple Super Bowls without it. Why? Because of the talent around Brady that has been able to supplement a less than stellar running back. Even the best running backs in football are not going to gain a lot of yards behind a bad offensive line. And with no offensive line and with no long-term solution at quarterback after the team passed on Sam Darnold and, by the way, allowed their cross-city rivals, the New York Jets, to get him, the Giants are in a world of hurt. If Darnold turns into a Pro Bowl quarterback and the team can't find an adequate replacement for Eli Manning, they are going to be tarred and feathered on WFAN and around the Big Apple's airwaves for the next decade. That wraps up our Week 2 recap, but we're going to finish it off with the strangest moment of Week 2. We had a lot of them to talk about here on our recap. The Clay Matthews personal foul penalty, roughing the passer on Kirk Cousins, that ended up costing the Packers really the game against the Vikings, was a nominee. But in the end, how can you go anywhere but the town that's produced perhaps the most weird moments in the NFL over the past 10 years? The city of Buffalo, New York. This is a town in Buffalo that not only has Bills Mafia, which sees fans throwing each other on tables, lighting each other on fire, doing butt funnels before the game, on smoke shows at tailgates, and of course throwing dildos on the field in NFL action. But now, players are straight up quitting at halftime. Vontae Davis, a former Pro Bowl corner for the Dolphins and the Colts, announced after the game that he had retired. But he didn't stick it out for the entirety of the 60-minute loss to the Los Angeles Chargers. Davis, at halftime, after his team gave up multiple touchdowns to Melvin Gordon and the Chargers in the first half, called it quits, changed into street clothes as the rest of his team was getting ready for the second half, and walked out, only telling coaches, "I quit. I'm retired." He didn't mention it to any teammates, and defensive captain linebacker Lorenzo Alexander told the media after the game that he found out that Vontae had quit after he got onto the field in the second half and was told by coaches that Davis had left the team. Alexander said it was the most ridiculous thing and disrespectful thing he'd ever seen on a football field, and it's hard to argue. This is a guy in Davis who once cried on Hard Knocks when he was traded by Joe Philbin from the Dolphins for a second-round pick to the Indianapolis Colts in 2012, and now he just quit on his team. He even posted this back in 2011 on Twitter. That didn't age well. Vontae Davis retiring halfway through a game. That's how sad Buffalo is. They can't even get their players to stay an entire 60 minutes. How can they expect their fans to stay an entire season? That's going to wrap things up here on Unscripted with SkoodSports. I'm John Skoudras. Good night, good luck, and good football. We'll see you next time.
Comes again off the turnover!